Michael Michael Pittman, yeah, wide receiver 19. He got a contract extension. He's coming off one of his best years, if not the best year of his career. You might be sitting there thinking like, why would you fade him after coming off the best season of his career? He's still pretty young. He's wide receiver 19 off the board. He's going on average at the 311 spot in 12-man leagues. Career best, 7.85 targets per game, 6.81 receptions, 72 yards, 10.6 yards per catch. Yeah, I mean, he had a really good year. I think Minshew helped that. Crazy enough, I think Steichen really squeezed as much juice as possible out of it. But I mean, he only had 3 top 12 finishes last season, and he was 18th in points per game. So when I look at Pittman, he has a really high floor, but he doesn't really have much boom to him. This is a guy that if you need stability on the roster, he's worth drafting. But at the 311, it's hard to call for stability. I personally like upside in the third round, but it's all going to matter as to where you're drafting. But I just don't think where he's going. I don't want to spend a third round pick on Pittman. Like I said, he had 6 weeks where he didn't finish better than the wide receiver 37 last year, which was pretty shocking to me. You have Josh Downs and Adonai Mitchell, who I think are going to eat into his target share. Downs had 98 targets last season as a rookie. Now he is coming off the ankle sprain, and so we'll see how that goes. But even Alec Pierce, who had a really good camp from all reports, and said Adonai Mitchell before Downs went down. Downs went down. Adonai Mitchell was fighting with Pierce for the wide receiver 3 role because Pierce just looked that good. So I worry that this is a guy in Pittman who relies on a lot of volume to make his hay in fantasy. I worry that if he gets some of that volume chewed into, that he's just not going to produce at where he's going. Some guy and Anthony Richardson, the accuracy issues do worry me a little bit. We just got to see where his arm is when the season goes, and we didn't really get to see a ton, in the preseason outside of that last game that he played. But some guys I prefer that I think have higher upside are DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, and Devonta Smith, all who are in offenses that I believe are going to throw the football more, and they all should see more volume. DJ Moore probably has they all have competition. Don't get me wrong. DJ Moore may have the best competition around him, but I still think the game script will lend them to throwing the football more. And for what it's worth, this isn't a knock on Anthony Richardson, but I do think all 3 of those guys have better quarterbacks when it comes to throwing them the football and the quality of their targets. I think DK, when you talk Geno Smith, when you talk Caleb Williams, and when you talk Jalen Hurts, I think all 3 of those quarterbacks are going to be better at getting those guys the football than Anthony Richardson will be this year, who may look to run a lot. So I am fading Michael Pittman at his cost this year, and I think he's definitely going to bust for sure.
Anthony, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm in on Anthony Richardson, as people who listen to this show know, but I'm not necessarily in on Michael Pittman because I'm buying into what Anthony Richardson can do, with his legs. And as Pete suggested, this is a crowded wide receiver room. Not only do we have Pittman, A.D. Mitchell starting to look the part, and, you got Josh Downs coming back. And for the first time, this didn't happen last year in the small sample size we saw AR, is that Jonathan Taylor's also going to be on the field. So I think this could be a run-dominant football team. And I think that downgrades Michael Pittman a little bit. Last year, we were drafting Michael Pittman similar to Mike Evans, where both of them were relative league winners. We were drafting them at like 7th, 8th round. And they were returning, especially Evans, but also Pittman, high quality production in fantasy football. And now I feel like we might be drafting Michael Pittman at his ceiling. I don't know if there's a higher ceiling to be had, especially with all the wide receiver talent in fantasy football that we can get around Michael Pittman. Like guys I mentioned earlier during the Adams take, DJ Moore, Rashee Rice, And if you want to go for the ultimate ceiling play around that price point, I think that guy could be George Pickens, to where you could draft another position where you're going to draft Pittman and they get Pickens in the next round.
Yeah, that all sounds good to me.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough for me to click on him. He was cheaper last year. He was a much better value. Third round stuff.
Right.
I mean, if you're in Greg's league, he said Pittman went in the 8th round in a standard temp team. Sure, yeah, I can stomach that cost for sure. We have one question and then we'll go on here. Jonathan Santiago just wants to know. He says his wide receivers being Adams, Ayuk, and Garrett Wilson. Wants to know what your thoughts. I don't know if this is redraft or dynasty, but either way, I mean, it's hard to do much better than that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I know Adams is a fade, but he's going to provide a floor, and Wilson provides that upside. And
I was going to say
somewhere in the middle too.
Where Adams is a nice number 3 with those other 2 guys.
Yeah,
where I wouldn't depend on I wouldn't want to depend on Adams as my 1 anymore.
Yeah, yep, I completely agree. All right.
So that comment, London's going 2nd round.
I just think he's saying at his cost, he'd rather pay up for London than take Pittman at the price that he's going.